Hello, everyone. Mr. Graves, do you know what's going on in the country these days in a couple of weeks?
Election.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I didn't know that. There is an election going on. What shall we do? I'll tell you what. We're going to welcome you through another... Wow, I just crapped that way up. Why don't you read this time? You want to do that?
I keep telling you, we need to have a recording, and you can just play that recording as an intro every time, man.
But this is way funner.
It's always right.
Way funner,
you
man.
Never mess it up.
I am Chris Graves. I am a mental health and substance abuse therapist. He is a unbeatable mind life coach. I have a book coming out soon, Rediscovering Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self. That's actually getting pretty daggum soon, man. It really is.
When is it, March?
Yeah, March is the full one, but it'll be out much sooner than that. As a matter of fact, whole wrap is done. They're going to have me copies like next week or so.
What's the name of the book?
Yeah, Through a Therapist's Eyes, Rediscovering Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self. And you have a website, wininyourmind.com. Approach him about becoming an unbeatable mind coach for you. He will work with you through that program anywhere in the nation or the world. We welcome you to Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast, seeing the world through the lens of a therapist and a coach. Being aware there's not the delivery of therapy services still in any way, and checking out throughatherapist'seyes.com. Mr. Neil Robinson, how are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you guys?
All right, man. We get Neil and Craig on the show today. We'll tell you why and what we're doing here in a little bit. But I usually get to say Mr. Graves. I guess this time I'm going to say Mr. Robinson. What shall we do? The human emotional experience.
Figure it out together.
I love it. There you go. What are we talking about tonight, Mr. Graves?
One of my favorite subjects.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
Politics, the election, right?
Politics, the election, stress, anxiety, you, and mental health. This should be fun. This should be interesting. I figured that, we've been doing some things on marriage and stuff lately. We're going to follow that up a little bit, but taking a little bit of a break. We're recording this actually right now. We have an event going on TV, I believe, as we speak. You know what that is?
Yeah, the debate. There's a presidential debate going on.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Oh,
What were you thinking about?
I was talking about, I thought there was a special edition, a 90-minute episode of a Saturday Night Live skit on tonight.
Oh, that's probably more like it, right? Probably more true to the...
Honest to God, man, when I watched that last time, that is literally what came to my mind, that we could have two comedians sitting up there on the stage for 90 minutes, and it seemed like a 90-minute Saturday Night Live skit.
I didn't watch it. I did see some of the highlights. I think I turned it on for about 10 minutes and cut it off.
Did you?
Yeah.
I subjected myself to the whole thing. I really did.
Yeah.
I really did. Did you watch that?
No.
Neil, you did not.
No.
Didn't watch it at all.
Nope, not at all. Family was more important. So.
Maybe that's why I created this topic. I need to check with you guys on my mental health because, yeah, you gonna watch it tonight? I've got it recorded. I'm gonna be honest.
I might check the highlights this time. See
Yeah.
what's going on? Yeah.
You, sir?
I don't think I'm gonna watch it. I think we'll be recording for a while tonight, and then I'll probably just catch some highlights tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my mind's pretty much made up. It's probably most Americans are.
I think so. I mean, what is it? Early voting is something like 50% already done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I saw a figure of that or something like that. So what we're going to do tonight, audience, is we really just wanted to kind of kick around. With us, our full staff, we have Neil joining us on the mics tonight. Usually he is way in the back doing all the background stuff that you'll enjoy on throughatherapist'seyes.com. And Neil, I guess I'll say publicly to you, man, I appreciate what you're doing on the site. It's looking sweet, and we have a new thing today. We'll talk about that about midpoint or whatnot. But, it's really looking good out there. What do you got to say about the website? What are you doing? What do we look for in the next couple of weeks?
Well, you guys have put a lot of content out there for me to work with, so it seems overwhelming, but I think it's a great resource for people that need a lot of mental health help. There's a lot of resources out there that I don't think people realize are out there. So I've been enjoying diving into it, tweaking it, making some changes, updating it. It's been fun. And I've enjoyed working with you guys so far.
So far?
So far, so good.
Well, you threw that in there, Craig, real quick. Did you hear that?
Yeah. And just to clarify, it's not really mental health help as much as it is education. So these shows and the content's not therapy services in any form or fashion. So just to be clear on that.
Yeah, I picked up on that too, and I'm glad you said that because really, I mean, that's one of the things about this show. We're blowing up myths and stereotypes and stigmas about mental health because, dude, we all have it. We all manage it. We're all in it. And right now is the point of the show today with the election. So this is going to come out the 29th, I guess, right? And when is election day? I guess that'll be like 3 or 4 days before election day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a stressful time out there.
Very much so.
The realities that we've got going on in combination are just off the chain, on and on and on. And of course, we all know about the race relation troubles that we've had across our nation. And it seems like it has gone on and on and on. And I think we're all going to be happy and, relieved when this whole thing of the election is done because it seems like it's going on and on. And right? So I wanted to get us together, and Neil gets to jump on the mics today just to have kind of an honest, open, and frank conversation about the realities that I just laid out with the stress that we're having. Maybe a little bit about what you're doing, a little bit about what you're enjoying. But yeah, because you can enjoy this stuff too. A little bit about what you're thinking and just how stressed out are we, right? So we're just going to have a free conversation about that, and I think that there's a lot that we can kind of get to and kind of make sense out of this time. So I guess let's start out with a bit of a question, guys. What do you think? I mean, people get wiry when we have an election season. The cycle comes around, and it's not new to be stressful. Do you think it is more stressful now than it is typically? Right? I mean, what are you experiencing with that?
Yeah, I think it's probably more stressful. I keep hearing people say this is the most important election in a long, long time. So I at least I get the feeling that there's more tension and more stress going on around the election than normal. At least than I remember in my adult life.
Mm-hmm. What are you thinking, Neil?
I think the same thing. I mean, I feel like both sides of the politics seems like there's more weight to it for them. So that way they feel like this is such a big turning point, as Craig pointed out, that if their side doesn't win, that it's very detrimental to our nation. And they wholeheartedly believe that. And so I think this is more stressful because it is such an extreme, it seems like, with both parties as much as it has been in the past. So there is almost a more divided, we have to win side on both sides.
Which I'm glad we get to it right off the get-go. It's one of the things that I was thinking about. We're free-flowing with thought today, audience, this time. There's not a lot of prepared thought this time. But I did have a couple points, I think, if I remember correctly. We'll see how the conversation goes. But this was one of them, right? I don't want to talk you two into it or out of it. But I do have the belief myself, honestly, that, dude, I know people are saying that, this is such an important election, and they're all important. This is one of the most important elections in our lifetime. You hear that. Well, I heard that when Barack Obama was coming in. I heard that when Trump was going for the first time, and I'm hearing that now. And I think the reality of it is, I don't know that I'm buying that. I think there is a mental health, human nature reality that people get in the moment. I definitely believe that people really forget history. We do not have a very good complex grasp oftentimes because of being so inundated with what's in our face right now. So that 20 years ago or so, I think we forget what it was like with the Gulf War and, Bush, or when Reagan was in place. A lot of people don't even have that experience. They're only 20 years old or 30 years old and voting for the first time. Dude, we had like a guy that was running for his fourth term in the middle of a world war. Right?
Yeah, but I think that the difference is we're so divided as a country. Back then, we were all together. We all had a common goal to win the war, to beat the Germans. And I get what you're saying. There's been a civil war. There's been World War II. There's been the 1960s. There's been trying times in our country, but it seems like the divide is so bad now And obviously, I have political leanings, but I don't like any of the government really at this point. I don't think either party has the best interest of the American people at heart, and I think that what we're seeing is a power grab. And I do see how putting one party or the other in power could shift the direction of the country long term. I mean, it just seems like there's much more division and tension in politics right now than I remember. And maybe that, of course I wasn't alive when these other events were going on.
Kennedy was shot
and things were bad. Yeah, but it's just people are so divided, man. People are getting it's just people are getting ridiculous.
I don't want to talk you in it or out of it, but what are you thinking? I mean, is it really, the most important election?
They were, like you said, they're all very important. I think Craig hit on the head. I feel like when you look at the previous elections with the wars and stuff, that almost did unify the nation. There was a reason. There was something they were fighting together for, unifying for. You always had the outskirts, the protesters of the Vietnam War, but in this case, without really an outside source that the nation can really unify and get together on, it's all about internal struggles, and that internal struggle seems to be dividing us as to what people think is best for our nation. So, when 9/11 came around, the nation was unified for that cause. And so that kind of changes how everyone works together, how they communicate. There's empathy. There's a different attitude to it, where now, and I think the pandemic had something to do with it, was the fact that we're really stressed from being locked up for the last 6-8 months.
Yes.
And I just don't think where our patience is there. We don't have a unified cause that as a whole that everyone can get together on. And I think that's part of our struggle right now for this one. And I think that's why it seems a lot more important than previous elections. Because we are overly stressed and hypersensitive because we are dealing with the pandemic, dealing with the protest, dealing with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me, and I'm going to agree and disagree with I think you two guys, in the sense that it is shocking to me that we haven't been able to unify as a people in a pandemic environment. That is a 9/11. That is a war. That is a coming, together as a unified group to be able to manage a situation. I mean, it is amazing to me that is the case, and I think that is a distinct difference. However, I'm geeky in the sense of I like to watch documentaries. I enjoy those black and white things you see on TV, and Vice President, what was his name? Dadgummit. When Ford was coming into power, I forget what his vice. That guy was heavily criticized and just demonized, really, in the media in the way that he went about campaigning. I mean, and that was just a vice president. It was like a big deal. So I think that this mental health factor, I really want to be able to suggest, I hope with some legitimacy, that if Biden wins, we're not going to degenerate into a socialist environment where the country's going to be unrecognizable and everything's going to go, south. If Trump wins, it's not going to be just everybody's going to continue to hate each other and nothing's going to go right, and there's going to be tweets still every day. Well, there may be tweets every day, actually, but it's going to be okay. Like, we're going to have points where we disagree, but we will have another election in 2024, I think, right? So I just don't want us as a fabric of our society to be torn apart more than it seems like it already is. We'll be okay either way. Is that not possible?
I think anything's possible, yeah, and I hope you're right. And I know at times like this, you do hear a lot of fear mongering and people speculating. I think it could go. I think it could go south. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert on it, and things that I say probably just drive somebody else's anxiety too, because I'm not an expert on some of the topics I'm talking on. But you hear crazy things. I've heard from two different people on opposite ends of the spectrum, one right and one left, that and again, I'm going to try to remain as neutral as possible on what I say here, but the Democrats want to give illegal aliens the right to vote, thinking they're going to vote Democrat. They want to abolish the electoral college. Now they're talking about the agenda would include stacking the Supreme Court. So both of these guys who were one's on the far left, or not far left, one's left wing, one's more right wing, have said if that were to happen, then a Republican would never win another election in the history of our country. And that would definitely change the trajectory of the states, of the United States, if that were to happen. So, so I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't buy that for a second. I really don't. It wasn't too long ago when Barack came in power, and I remember very distinctly a lot of talking heads or whatever, like, oh, the Republican Party's dying, it's dead. I mean, they can't win anything now. Come on, where are we at now? It's very much alive. They very much have the Senate and the presidency.
But if those three things
that.
were to happen, if those three things were to happen, maybe those guys are right. And I say a guy on the left and on the right both said that, because otherwise you'll say, oh, it's just a right-wing conspiracy theory nut, But actually a guy who leans left, I heard him say it today, said the exact same thing, that if that were to happen, Republicans would never win again. And that would change the whole future of our country if it were to go down that way.
Okay. What are you thinking, Mr. Neal? As you hear that and as you see, some of the things people are talking about with fear.
I think a lot of people have they have fear because of the unknown. And I think with the way our government is, I think there's some checks and balances.
Craig, he just hit my second one that I was going to talk about. He stole my thunder, this guy.
What, the fear of the unknown?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
And the reality of it is we do have the three checks and balances, the judicial, the executive, the legislative. And so when the parties try to do those things, you would hope that those checks and balances comes in. So, anytime you deal with something where you don't know what's going to happen, the biggest problem that happens is your imagination. You start thinking, oh, what if this happens or what if that happens? And that's what a lot of people do.
Right.
And a lot of the fears, as Craig pointed out, if that happens, that's a big problem with our government, with our nation, if that actually happens what they're saying. So I understand the fear, but the reality is government works slow. Our government has checks and balances in there, and hopefully that it keeps those types of things from happening. So our fear could be unwarranted, but it is important to really look at and say, if I have that fear, can I do something to keep it from happening? Can I do anything in my control to help? And instead of just letting those fears run rampant.
It's an excellent point, Neal. And Craig, we have a common friend, Dave, in our group. I was recently chatting with him, and we were kicking a lot of stuff around. And I shared with him, and I'll share with our audience right now. The thing that I said to him was, my biggest issue, one of my biggest voting issues, I'm probably not going to do it, but I think I might make it one of my exclusive issues that I would maybe vote left or right from back and forth until somebody deals with the debt.
I don't think anybody's going to deal with that.
It scares me to death, right?
What do you do at this point?
You better do something before it capitalizes beyond what we can.
I think it's already past that.
Maybe so, and that makes me nervous. You're making me nervous and scared. Don't do that.
$2 trillion stimulus because of it's just going to get worse and worse.
But what he said was, for him, that's a watch item. So Neal, I think you hit an absolutely excellent point insofar as how people get terrified and fearful and create things in their head. Smart people, now mind you, we're very smart people. It's part of what high achievers do is they have a lot of anxiety and they see all the negatives, in advance, and they ward that one off, and they ward that one off, and they ward that one off, and they work super hard to prevent that one, and they work doubly super hard to prevent that one and that one. And you know what we call them? Oftentimes, chief executive officers. Okay? A lot of anxiety components and a lot of negative views, and it works. It sometimes can really work to guide a company in a good direction. So these are watch items. We can't get to a point, and I hope no one hears me in saying, hey guys, let's manage our mental health. Let's not be fearful. Relax. This isn't important. Because that's not it at all. These are all very important things. They're very, very crucial things. The 3 things you listed, Craig, I personally hope don't happen, period. I think we need to have them on a watch list and make sure that we manage that so that if one of them happened, that we're very thoughtful about it. And we have checks and balances in our systems. That's why we only have a very short-term president. That's not common in the history of man to have terms like that. Right?
Yeah, and we need to have short-term congressmen and senators too.
Yeah, and honestly, maybe even justices. That's a new thing I'm wondering about.
Yeah.
But that's a lifetime appointment for the stability of law, which is probably smarter people than me, the founders of our Constitution and Federalist system, probably have that in place for a good reason. So
that's another thing that baffles me is how laws, the Supreme Court vote seems to go along liberal versus conservative lines. That's ridiculous. It's the law. It ought to be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I'm looking at the ballot and you're voting for judges. This is a liberal judge. This is a conservative judge, and it's listed right there. Like, what is that?
Yeah,
I don't even have a category for that. Yeah. So is it more stressful than it typically is? Okay, we have some checks, maybe not. Fear of the unknown. I think I want to bring that up again and get that, kind of talked about a little bit more in detail. How is the pandemic really a part of this? My mental health mind really ties a lot of what's going on to that, honestly.
I don't think it plays a whole huge part of it, to be honest.
You do not?
No, I don't. I mean, it
Really?
may lose Trump votes because, the way the media, or maybe he has handled it badly. I don't know. But we were in this, excuse my language, we were in this shit show before coronavirus showed up. They were trying to impeach the president.
Yeah.
Before the coronavirus showed up. And that even may have delayed the response to the federal response to the virus. It was the impeachment proceedings going on. That's another topic of discussion, I guess. But yeah, I mean, coronavirus is probably playing a little bit of a part of it, but it was already happening before that. I mean, the lines were already drawn.
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm saying with regards to the level of anxiousness that we have as a people, in regards to the intensity of the stress things people are feeling, I'm going to maintain as a mental health mind, in my clinical mind, it is a huge component of what's going on.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
You'd be a fool to think it wasn't, but not. I don't think the coronavirus is driving any election anxiety. And if you think that's the case, you're going to have to help me understand why.
Because that's driven. Either you could argue artificially created or legitimately to be had. Either way, it is the driving issue of people's emotion, I sense.
I would say some people's. If you're afraid of the virus, then yeah, if it's generating fear in you. But if you've kind of accepted it for what it is, and you're just doing the best you can, then I would say no. And again, a lot of that's along political lines. It's absolutely amazing to me how the coronavirus has become a political issue. Masks are a political issue. Shutdowns are a political issue. Drugs have become a political issue. Treatments have become a political. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre
And unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't know if our listeners may not know this, but I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day, and he said a friend of his tested positive for COVID, and so the doctor asks him. I may have told this story on the show. I know I told it to you, Chris, at one point, but the guy says, "Are you a Democrat or a Republican?" And the guy's like, "What's that got to do with it?" And he says, "Well, I believe that hydroxychloroquine helps people." He said, what I have found is my Democratic patients don't want to take it, and my Republican patients will take the drug. So, where are you? And so, even drug treatments have become political issues.
I think it kind of gets back, Neil, to what you were saying with the fear of the unknown. I believe that it's either fanning the flames, and you could say creating the fear, or that it's a legitimate concern and fear. And I would submit to you, neither needs to be the way. I can't tell you how much of a typical phobia, germs and disease and fears and phobias of hospitals and going to the doctor in the first place. I think that is an experience that people have, Craig, that is just part of the human psyche that is exacerbated, used, you could say, in the election to manage what the agenda is of somebody. And I think a lot of it is that you cannot see the coronavirus.
Right.
You cannot see it. And it's said to kill people. So people are walking around fearful that they're going to die. That's what's happening.
Some people are, not
right?
everybody.
Not everybody.
Not everybody.
Absolutely.
Afraid of that.
Absolutely. But you see what I'm saying? I mean, I think that the fear of the unknown with that, Neil, is a big part of what is going on. I think the pandemic's right in the middle of the anxieties people have.
Yeah, and I think the political campaigns are playing off that fear. You know, anytime you want to, sway someone's judgment, you deal with their emotions first. And I think they're fanning those flames by bringing up that when you watch the campaign, any of the campaign commercials, it's always those things that hit close to home, that brings out those emotions. Once you get the emotions in check, it's a whole nother ball game. They really take to heart what they're seeing, what they're believing. And it's you have to get through the emotions to get to the thoughts, to get to an understanding. And the commercials are great because it's hitting those emotions for whether you believe strongly either way. They're hitting those so people really believe this party is going to save the country. Either way you go.
Right. Greg, we did some coronavirus shows, some pandemic shows and stuff. You remember the 3 things I was calling for? I've talked a lot about that, right? A calm attitude. No, I'm sorry. First, prudent decisions. Second, a calm attitude, so fear and shame aren't involved in what people are doing. And 3, awareness, so that people are aware of what's going on, so that ignorance or avoidance isn't in charge. I think that's a pretty strong 3. I've said it right from the beginning. I'll say it right through here. I do believe that the pandemic's in the middle of a lot of the anxieties and tensions that people are having, whether they're pissed off that it's overblown or they're fearful they're going to die in their car alone. Prudent, calm, and awareness. That's what we need. And I think they've failed on all 3, honestly.
Yeah, I think awareness is the tough part because you don't know who to believe.
Yeah.
And, the CDC says one thing one day and something else the next. Masks are useless. Don't wear a mask. And the next day it's, masks save lives. Wear masks. And it's just ridiculous, the misinformation that's out there. And, then you start playing into censorship where you have social media companies censoring stuff that people are posting data off the CDC website, and Facebook and Twitter are removing that information, saying it's disinformation when it comes straight off of the CDC website. It's just, you can't be aware. You don't know what the hell to believe.
Wow, right. Good segue. Social media. I think that this is also a big factor in kind of what's going on with increasing the level of stress and anxiety people are having. And, this goes back to Mr. Adrian Spickler. You remember when he was on here and he was talking about technology anxiety? And you remember how he talked about, Craig, Neil, you weren't with us then, that how he talked about one of the big factors that technology has created. You remember choice, right? Do you remember he was talking about the factor? And, you're sorry, Craig, but you're a bigger techie guy than both of us, I think. Is that a fair thing to say, sir?
Pretty much.
Sorry. He said that choices, technology, the boom in the internet, the boom in technology. We're getting ready to jump to 5G here in a minute, whatever that means. He laughs at me like, Chris, of course it means this. You should see that look, audience. That was a piercing
It means
look.
you get choices faster now.
Right. Right. How do people handle all of the choices that we have, and how much of that is a part of what people are experiencing I'm going to give you a little bit of tip or hint, Mr. Graves. I feel like that is why it's one of the big reasons why it seems that there is so much polarization. We'll talk about it. But Neil, what do you think about it? I mean, social media, the impact, how is that increasing or maybe decreasing anxiety? I don't know what you think.
Social media is increasing anxiety. As technology's evolved and has gotten smarter, faster, better, it's made us rely on it more, which means we don't think like we should. We don't focus like we should. We don't really comprehend or understand like we should. So when you have all these choices, like you said, with social media, all these things are coming in from all different sources, from valid sources to not valid sources, invalid.
It's the Russians.
Yeah, the Russians, exactly. It's a lot to take in, and we don't have the time to really understand it, or there isn't a vetting process to really say, is this right or not? And those choices really, to me, cause more anxiety. If you go and you look at a map and you want to go find something to eat, and you have 50 restaurants,
Literally.
you literally freeze. It's that analysis by paralysis, like, which one do I pick? But if you had 2 restaurants or 3 restaurants, oh, I feel like Mexican, I'll go over there. But now you have 5 Mexican restaurants and a couple mixed ones. Like, I don't know which one I want. So honestly, social media, too many choices, it's overwhelming. It causes more anxiety than it helps, personally. And as someone who does technology stuff.
Let me come back to you, Neil. It's awesome because, Craig, we talked about it before when we did the media shows. And we said, you and I grew up about the same era. Dan Rather, right? One of the most trusted people in America at the time. I was just listening to Neil right there, and I'm going to ask you the question. And then I want to go back to you, Neil, and say, if Dan Rather were on TV right now, do you think you and I would be glued to the TV and watching Dan Rather rather than fill in the blank? Right?
That's a good question.
Isn't it?
I don't know. To me, it seems back in those days, I'd rather hear Dan Rather than I would the people on TV now. But journalism has gone into such a cesspool that I'm afraid that Dan Rather wouldn't be any better than the rest of these people if he were on the TV today.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I don't know, right? It occurred to me, Neil, as you were talking about that. I mean, you remember Dan Rather and how news was in the 80s when we was all growing up and stuff.
Right,
I mean,
I heard about that.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit younger. I wasn't paying attention to the news at that time.
That is so painful. That's so painful, Mr. Graves. It was, and I think that is an interesting question that I'd like to pose for our listening audience that is old enough, at least, Neil, to know who Dan Rather really was and to be able to watch news in that era, if you would watch that same guy today. And I submit to you that, maybe Craig, you're right. That would force Dan to fight for more headlines and push an agenda to get a little bit more spicy, a little bit more racy, a little bit more controversial, a little bit more heard, and he wouldn't be Dan Rather. Can you be Dan Rather in this market?
No, you can't. You wouldn't be able to get a job.
Wow, this is free thought. We're in free talk today, and that makes me sad. That makes me sad if that's the case.
Maybe you could on some stations, but others you could not. Definitely could not.
That seriously sucks. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that more. See, that seriously sucks.
Yeah,
Dan Rather couldn't be Dan Rather in this global media market today. That's the statement for the audience to ponder.
Yeah, people who've listened to us for any amount of time know my frustrations with the media, and it just keeps getting worse. I mean, it just keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
This Hunter Biden story that came out, Twitter and Facebook basically censored the story from their platforms. CNN, NBC, CBS, NPR, they're not even covering the thing, man, because they say it's sketchy information when they've ran story after story about the president on anonymous sources, and a lot of those stories now have been proven to be absolutely false. And so the reason I point that out is because of the bias. I think you said that we need the media for our democracy, but we need an unbiased media who calls it like it is. We don't have that. We've got an extension of the Democratic Party in most cases in our media. The majority of our media is an extension of the Democratic Party. State-run media, basically.
Okay. I want to bring up the idea of social dilemma. Let's take a break, and we'll come right back, and we're going to get back to the media and the effects as demonstrated by social dilemma. Got a break for BetterHelp. This is a new thing, Mr. Graves, and Neil, I'd like for you to tell the audience what we've going on. We're going to spend a couple minutes here on this to demonstrate for the first time. We mentioned it, I think last week. It was just a brief mention. We've got a sponsorship relationship, a partnership with BetterHelp.com. Neil, what have you found out about these guys? What are they? What's going on? You got a new counseling button on throughatherapist's eyes.com, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we put it up actually yesterday. Got approval from BetterHelp, and basically, this is a great partnership. They're going to sponsor the podcast. Being a podcast about mental health and wellness, it's a great segue for those people that really need that next step, that really need that help. You know, as Craig mentioned earlier, our platform is an education platform. We're just kind of giving you guys information, but we also know that a lot of people need more help than that. And so BetterHelp can come in and give you some great online counseling, online therapists. And in the time of this pandemic, being able to talk to someone, even though it's a video face-to-face call or however they have it set up, it's a great resource for people that need it. You go to our website, you can click on counseling at the top. On that page, on the online counseling page, there is a button. You click on that button, it'll take you through a nice survey that basically figures out, you know, where to best help you. It asks you questions about what you're going through, who you are, and then it's going to give you some options at the end and match you with the perfect online therapist for you to help deal with your issues. So it's a great resource. You know, Chris, you mentioned them at one point and followed up, and I think it's a great sponsorship for us.
You know what I would have said 6 months ago about telephonic therapy?
I think you were against it, right?
Boo. Mr. Graves, you know what I say now about telephonic therapy?
I do not.
Yes, you do. He tuned out.
I never even heard of telephonic therapy. So
What?
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I know, he's gone. We're going to come back to the room, man. And now I say, yay. It is awesome. And I have been shocked, honestly, about that. I am excited about this, actually, for our audience. In full disclosure, we have on the website there, please note that Through a Therapist's Eyes does receive compensation for referrals to BetterHelp. That is a way to help the show, but you're helping yourself out, too. It's a win-win. You know, I actually held off a little bit on this because I really only talk about and advocate for things that I really believe in. And I have been a big skeptic. I've never really liked doing telephone therapy. I have not. I don't feel that you get a good connection. I don't feel that you get as much engagement. I don't feel that you get as much, read on, even diagnostics and such like that. I mean, it is still by far better to see a therapist face to face. I will say that. However, dude, some of my better sessions, Craig, have been on the telephone with people. And I'm shocked at that. And so this is a great service. If you're somewhere in the nation and you want to kind of get connected, we'll talk more about it a little bit, but I am fully ready and able to endorse, betterhelp.com. Check it out on the counseling button to throughatherapist's.eyes.com. So back to the show with The Social Dilemma. Have you guys seen this show?
It's on my list, but I haven't watched it yet.
We need to watch that, and I want to watch that together with you, actually. That'd be a good Friday night activity if you're down with it soon.
Friday night watching Netflix with Chris. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
You guys gonna Netflix and chill?
Wow. I feel hurt. I'm not laughing. Bummer. So, to hell with him. Neil, how about we watch Social Dilemma together? And on a Good Friday night, I'd like to do that with you. You down with that?
Sure, we'll pick a time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. Do you know what it is, Neil?
Nope.
Oh, you don't even know?
I don't watch Netflix.
It's coming up, and I think it's going to come up actually again in the next show that we do actually next week. I have not watched it myself, but I think that it demonstrates what I learned about in my conferences probably a year or two ago, the last CEU cycle that I had. The reality of it is we know that social media causes anxiety. We know this. Remember when we did it for the kids, parenting and social media with kids? And Neil, I think you just nailed it a little bit ago. Like the anxiety creation through choices, and that's not all, but through the inundation of information. It's overwhelming, not just choices, but information in total. The way that these things are specifically designed. I mean, we're sitting here, and Craig's literally right now got his phone in his hand. Neil's typing on a computer. I'm looking at my phone because the Apple thing just came up, and my computer is on from what we were talking about a little bit ago with BetterHelp. Like, how do we have our attentions frayed and strained and not feel anxious? Not to mention, they're geared scientifically through psychologists who have been designing this as hired by Facebooks and the Twitters and the Tumblrs and the Twitters and whatever's the thing to absolutely start off small, get you engaged, tingle your interests, tingle it even more, beep and buzz, give you notifications, reminders, you feel good. It's an endorphin release. It actually triggers dopamine when you get the ding, somebody wants to talk to me. They know this, right?
Yep.
And this is right in the middle of our now public elections, plural. I think that is a big part, and the show Social Dilemma is going to demonstrate that because the founders of these companies are on there talking about this in having their fear of it. Their fear of it. I'm looking forward to it, if you will, Craig, on a Friday night. Watch it with me.
Whose fear of it?
The creators of the social media sites themselves. Pinterest is the creator of Pinterest, the creator of, I think, Twitter. A few of them are on this show. Mm. And I'll tell you, the conferences that I went to with what was the name? Mr. Wago. Remember that?
Yeah.
He's a leading professional in the nation talking about children and addictions and abuses and anxiety creators. And he helped me I learned a lot from him, both at his conference and in our talkings about it. He demonstrated that these guys that created these social media sites do not allow their teens to have those tools. Remember that?
Interesting.
Remember that?
I don't remember him saying that.
Yeah, maybe it was a conference then, but yeah.
So you're saying that Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and people like that who have children don't let their kids have social media.
Will not.
Interesting.
I think I heard something like Steve Jobs didn't allow his kids to have like iPhones or iPads or anything like that.
None of them do. I think. I don't know if that's a true statement, but I suspect. And I watched the show, and I've heard things already to say.
That's terrible.
It's terrible
because those guys are getting filthy wealthy.
Absolutely.
By kids using social media.
And we're suckers for it.
So they know it's detrimental. They won't let their kids have it.
Yeah.
Well,
it's almost like selling drugs, man.
It is.
It's crazy.
It absolutely is.
I mean, it kind of looks like those rock stars that they don't want their kids to get in the same environment just because they do it and they make money off of it. They know how bad it is, and they don't want them to have it either.
And here's my point for the purposes of our conversation. Guys, do we realize that is right in the middle of now our political election?
Yeah, I would argue that social media was around for the last couple elections. I don't think
not like this.
I do think it's probably digressed and
not quite like
down
this.
A bad place since then. Seems like it was more neutral.
I want to say that Obama, under his two terms, that's where the use of social media began to explode. Did Bush do? I don't think that he did much, did he?
Obama was the first president who really used social media marketing to get his.
I thought so.
To reach his audience.
It was new. It was like, whoa, what's he doing? He's cool. He's young. He's hip. He knows this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that was bad, and I'm not saying that what Trump does with Twitter primarily or with social media is necessarily bad or good. But I am saying that it's creating a lot of anxiety for people.
It's bad. It's not good. Trump posts a lot of messages, almost just to, it almost seems like just to stir things up.
It's effective.
Yeah, and pissing people off.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that that's good nor bad, only because I think that social media can be used for tremendously good. But we are not, as a society. How about this for a statement? We are not, as a society, ready or adept at using it effectively yet for our positive mental health and positive progression.
No, social media, we're talking about emotions earlier, and maybe we'll go back to that at some point, but it drives emotion, man. It drives anger, it drives fear, it drives anxiety, the stuff people post. I've quit following people who post a lot of political stuff on my social media channels.
I never did.
You know, I don't defriend people, but I will quit following them so I just don't have to see it, you know. And a lot of those are people I agree with. I just get tired of seeing it.
Absolutely.
You know? And you're not going to, I had a discussion the other day with some guys on social media, ironically. And I just don't believe you're going to change anybody's their political opinion based on stuff that you're posting on social media. I could be wrong, but that's just my belief.
Let me make fun of the Google search, and one of the things that I did here was augmenting what we're talking about a little bit with with things, and I didn't do this with this prep at all, hardly, but I did actually do one Google search. What did I type? I think I said the election and your mental health. That's what I typed into Google. You know, one of the things I found, because there are a lot of people that are blogging about this. There are a lot of people talking about this and stuff. Well, there's an article. It's in the social media website that we have. If you want to go see it, I guess, Neil, you'll have that up there.
Yep.
You could even delete it and not have it up there this time. I don't care. 3 ways in which voting can benefit mental health. I did saw like some of their ideas. They said 1, a resource that alleviates stress when you vote. Okay. 2, political activism linked to happiness. I guess there's some people that looked at that closely and tried to say, yeah. 3, a shield from discriminative stressors. Here's what I took from that. The only reason, go ahead, Craig.
Now go back over those. Let's go back over those one by one.
3, well, I don't want to spend a lot of time here at all. I really don't. I really, really don't, Craig, please. 3 ways in which voting can benefit mental health. One person's idea. This was on Medical News Today, I guess. Medicine News Today, whatever. 1, a resource that alleviates stress. 2, political activism linked towards happiness. And 3, a shield that...
Stop and go. Let's go one by one. So I don't see how voting itself can eliminate stress, because if you believe that the Democrats are going to do what I said, or if you believe that Trump is, going to institute it, and I do think it's funny that both sides think the other side's going to implement some kind of authoritarian government or whatever. But after you walk away from the poll, you're like, oh my God, I hope my guy wins, because if he don't, then this is going to happen. The other guy's going to take over the world.
That is not what happened to me a couple days ago.
Okay, well, let's hear your experience. And that didn't happen to me either, but I think there's people who probably are in that mindset.
Yeah. There is, I think, and I never thought about this until I was kind of thinking about this show and saw this article. And the reason why I added it to our conversation is because it is an action that you take. And generally in psychology and mental health, my book has a lot of action points in it. That's a big theme that you'll see in the Through a Therapist's Eyes, Rediscovering Emotion, Becoming Best Self. Take action, right? And voting is an action. So honestly, and I think that I experience this pretty much every time that I vote, it's like, oh, I did it. I feel good about having done it. And it's over. Like for me, I've done my action. I rest my peace with that ballot. It means a lot to me. I believe in our country. I believe in our system. And I did my part. It feels good to do your part.
Have you voted yet?
Yes.
Yeah, who'd you vote for?
Yeah. Well, I'm not telling you that on national worldwide television TV program, man.
Come on, man, tell us.
I voted for the best candidate. That's what I did. I voted for the winner. I always vote for the winner.
You voted for the least worst or whatever it's called.
Actually, I'm not going to lie. Big Brother, we like Big Brother. You don't watch the show. Do you watch Big Brother, Neil?
The show Big Brother.
Yeah, the show Big Brother, yeah.
Yeah.
We like reality TV a little bit. It's like they go on there and they're like, I reluctantly vote Cheryl to leave Big Brother. It's the kinds of thing. Anybody who listens to Big Brother out there, I felt like that this time. I'm not going to lie.
All right, what was number 2?
Oh, gosh. Political activism linked to happiness.
I don't think people who are actually out there who are political activists are very happy people.
I've never been one,
they
so
don't
I
appear
don't
to
know.
be happy to me. They're burning down cities and shooting each other. And
Well, you question if that's really political activism or something else.
Right, that's very, very much
those that are
something
doing that, going that
Shoot.
far.
even people I see who aren't doing that seem like they're angry. They
No,
just seem angry.
I disagree with you, Craig.
And
I've got
that's my perception.
Wait a minute, I got a really good example. We just did a show with Mr. Scotty. Oh my God, I'm blanking.
Scotty Reed.
That was a
thank
cool
you.
guy. No,
Right?
I take it back. He was a cool dude.
Dude, he is very, very active with the issues that we have in race relations in our county with a statue. And I mean, I went out and talked to the people at the protest, and it is not the rioting crazy people that we're talking about. Thank you, Neil, for your perspective there. It's activism is being able to voice your view. And that feels good, whether you're talking about it in a marriage, whether you're talking about it at work, when you have a meeting, when you feel heard, it's even better. You get frustrated when you don't feel heard. That's a factor. I'm thinking of this in the context of our mental health and relationships that we have. Grand on a macro level, simply on a micro level as well?
Yeah, I think that's probably debatable and based on the individual. I think that Scotty Reed was a really nice guy. I think that he wants to sit down with people and talk through the issues, man. I don't think he's a in-your-face kind of guy. But on the other hand, I got another guy on my social media who I've unfollowed because I get tired of seeing what he posts. But he's like, these people are criminals, you know. They ought to be thrown in jail, you know. All these people suck. And I'm like, dude, you know, you don't have any idea what you're talking about. And that's not a happy person.
And I think it goes back to really what activism really is. And I think the two things that this article, because I've kind of looked at it, because I see the show notes, is two things that this gives a person is, one, it gives them control. They actually are saying, hey, I'm doing something about something.
Good point.
And two, the other thing is it's a purpose. You know, when people feel lost, they're not sure where to go, they're getting bombarded with all these social media stuff. When they actually have a purpose behind what they're doing, they're more fulfilled and they're going to be more content with themselves. So I think even though it's funny that we're talking about voting and activism and stuff, it fulfills two big natures of taking control of your life and also having a purpose with what you're doing. So I can see where they're not that far off, because you're taking this especially younger generation that's bombarded with all these things, and they're saying, hey, you can actually do something and basically give yourself a purpose or a reason to do something. And I think that's the biggest difference that I see with this, and what they're trying to hit is there's a lot of things that they think are out of their control, you know, racism, police brutality, blah, 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 blah. But now with the activism, they can actually say, hey, it's not out of my control. They have more confidence in it, and there's less fear because they feel like they're doing something about it.
You know, it's funny, Neil, because I agree from a mental health perspective. I was listening to you there and trying to kind of think of it in the context of what I see in my office and how I'm working with people. And that is I mean, it's really consistent with what I see from people when they're feeling out of control, helpless, hopeless, and run over, and taking an action, getting something expressed, having a sense of control, whether it's real or not. Your vote is a semblance of control, and that's consistent with positive mental health.
Yeah, I don't disagree with having purpose and stuff like that. I just think that a lot of people who are on the far ends of that are not happy people. They're angry people. They're trying to bully people into their way of believing, and if they don't believe or if they disagree, then they try to blacklist or blackball those people in some way. You know, you can be a political activist or disagree with somebody and still have purpose and meaning and fulfillment, you know, if you do it in a loving way. But a lot of people aren't doing it that way. Because
we do not know how to have conversations on social media platforms behind our screens yet as a group of people.
Yeah, they're face to face on YouTube and some of the things, man. It's not just a social media issue. There are people who are angry and ugly who are out there and call themselves political activists.
True, but I think a lot of the texting, I mean, I'm getting inundated with texts on my phone from both parties. It's like crazy. I don't understand. I think all I was making a point there is people say a lot more on a computer behind a screen, you know, whether they're on Facebook or whatnot, than they would face to face.
I don't disagree with that at all.
Right.
But I'm just saying, I think
but
a lot of people who are political activists are not.
That's the way we're having a lot of political activist conversations, unfortunately.
True. But I see a lot of people who are talking to each other in person, and it's not pretty either.
And I think that goes back to when your nature is designed around quick responses on text or social media. When you actually go to put that into practice by talking to someone, your reactions are quick, knee-jerk. You know, it's like I'm trying to think of my teenage kids, and their communication is through text. Like, do you actually have a conversation with your friends? Like, they just sit there and stare at each other. It's like, that's what we're missing. That's what this technology kills for a lot of our stuff, is the fact that we don't actually properly have conversations. I don't get to sit there and look at Craig and say, oh, he's really getting mad. How do I actually empathize and deal with it? So technology causes that disconnect in how to really work with each other.
Right. Yeah. You know, I see that. You know, I think I want to play off that, Neil, and go to one of the last factors that I want to kind of point out, you know, is that, you know, along with the fear of the unknown, I think you had stole my thunder with that one, right? Yeah. Well, another one is that goes along, the two big ones that I was really kind of thinking about is this, you know, we'll be okay either way. And then the fear of the unknown. I should have probably said 3, honestly, because this one was, I think, was a big one kind of as well in my brain. The fear of change. Now, I don't think this is anything new. I think this is probably something that has gone through pretty much most all election cycles for the history that we've had them. People generally do not like things to change. It is kind of a combination of the fear of the unknown, but we know eventually things are going to change. And I think that's a good thing. We fight through that fear because we have term limits. Like we said a little bit ago, we all seem to think that's a good idea. Well, every time you have a term come up that's limited, that's change. How do people deal with that change? Is that comfortable or scary? Right? You ever think about that?
Yeah, all the time.
Change?
Oh yeah, change. I mean, that's the things that when people go through and changes are about to happen, that the unknown adds the fear, but the resiliency, everyone always makes it through. But when it comes to happen, just like when you have a kid and your wife's pregnant and she's about to have the baby, there's that fear of that change. But
Absolutely.
when it comes out, everything's okay. You know, think about what happened 4 years ago. We made it through the last 4 years, but the fear was there beforehand. And so it's that fear of the unknown because of the change. And then once the change happens, people will realize, hey, we can make it through this. It's just before that they doubt.
And you know what is cool, Neil? I didn't plan it this way, but it plays in my mind, I think, rather well. You know, what is it called? Bookending our show really when starting out that way and playing off what you just said. And we need to taxi in for a landing here, I think. You know, we'll be okay. And after the change, or if the Trump wins, it won't be a change, but when he is done, it will be a change. We get that change happen that causes anxiety, but then it'll be okay. And I think you just put words on what I started out trying to say, maybe not so well and eloquently as you just did, right? The fear of the unknown, the fear of change, when it's done, like, we're going to be okay. Even if it's Biden, oh God. Oh no, wait, I meant Craig. Even if it's Trump. I'm so confused, Neil. Right? Mr. Graves, you're good at summing us up. What are you guys thinking? I don't want to leave you guys out of thoughts that you had to wrap us up, but what are you thinking here, taxiing in? Are we going to be okay, Neil?
Absolutely. What about you, Craig? What do you think?
I think the sky's falling. I think I'm Chicken Little, man.
All right, you guys got any summary thoughts, things you're thinking about? You got to say yes or no. I'm going to stand here in silence like therapists can do in sessions and be silent for a while.
You know, I at this point, I really don't. I mean, I think that the anxiety is going to be there, people, until this thing's over with, and then we'll continue to roll on and see what happens in the future.
You know, again, people are having a hard time out there. We try to give you a little bit of entertainment with difficult topics at times. I know the pandemic's going on. I know race relations are going on. I know the election is going on. These are all very tough things. You know, we will get through this. I think I want to highlight again, we'll be okay either way, one way or another. I want to highlight prudent decisions, calm attitude, and awareness to be had with the pandemic. I want to highlight the idea that, you know, the media is what it is. We can maybe look for that Dan Rather, Mr. Graves, on TV. So he's got to be somewhere out there, right? And fear cannot rule, whether it's fear of change or fear of the unknown. So let's wrap it up, man. Election night in a few nights. Let's see what happens, guys. Strap in, buckle in. It's going to be okay. All right? We'll see you next week.